Is that the best thing? Absolutely not. Now, I mean, there's plenty of folks I'm sure that were doing something different. If you go back in history, not even that long ago, Wayne State University, there was a professor, Milton Erickson, who was a psychiatrist, and to my knowledge, or maybe very little prescribed medication. He did all of the healing work that he did with hypnosis. So he basically told people riveting stories, that brought them into a trance state, and he would essentially learn about, what was going on with them, and then he would share stories that would essentially help to shift their internal programs or symbols or metaphors. And when you do that, things change, and they change fairly quickly. Now, as far as actually practicing hypnosis, it's been more so in the last since I've been in private practice. I started back when I was in the mental health clinic. I was doing addiction medicine and mental health for St. John's Hospital 5 years before I started my private practice. So my supervisor is like, "Hey, you go ahead and do that great stuff. I'm a big fan of it. Solution focused therapy, all that kind of stuff." He goes, "But just don't document it." You know. So in any event, to answer your question, it's interesting how full circle, because nowadays I've been studying symbolic language and metaphors, and how to use that in the psychotherapeutic process, and in the hypnotherapeutic process. So essentially what we're doing is we're eliciting symbols for a problem state, and then we're essentially inviting those inviting change through the change of those symbols. So we're doing like really deep change work in a very short amount of time. And that's not only helping people change behaviors, habits, phobias, anxieties, post-traumatic stress, all these types of things, but it's also creating generative change. So for example, because we're talking about smoking today, somebody stops smoking, that's a simple behavior change. I mean, that can be done in 1 or 2 sessions flat, most of the time with most people. But then what about taking that simple behavior change and then moving that into a whole set of changes that, goes through time in somebody's life, and maybe at the end of a year, the person is like undergone like a complete transformation. They're exercising, they're eating well, they're being kinder with themselves. These sorts of things. Or maybe they're pursuing their dreams, and really going after the things that were like felt stopped as a result of being a smoker, because that's a very disempowered type of a state. So
that it sounds to me like you like to take people really along a journey, rather than having an event of a stop smoking session, but rather look at them from a holistic stance, which is probably why we connected to begin with, because I think we really connect on that, taking that 30,000 foot view of people. But I can appreciate what you're saying as far as, being able to take them on a journey to accomplish what they want. And when you're doing that, do you find that, initially, that whatever this addiction is, are they all, is the addiction just the way people choose for the same perhaps event that happened in their life that they're holding on to this? And then how do you get them to want to take the journey with you, rather than just having the one event of stopping the addiction? Does that make sense?
yeah. I mean, it's a fair question. I mean, I've studied psychology, and I've studied clinical social work, and one of the things that I got from clinical social work is that we got to meet people where they're at. So I don't get to choose who calls me and inquires about my services, but I do get to choose who I work with, and I'm very particular about that. And at the same time, I'll give you an example. There was a fellow a couple months ago, called me up and said, "Hey, I used to smoke 15 years ago and I stopped, but, now I'm smoking cigars like almost like clockwork every 4 months. And I just want to kind of finish the learning that I started, is a good way of putting it. So, that was just one session. We cleaned that up in one session, no problem. So everybody's different. And I think what's important is, yes, of course, I would love to take somebody from, a simple behavior change, or, a problem, they're having some kind of issue or problem in their life, and help them along a journey, like you said, to like a really, really complete type of transformation. And those are the folks that I love to work with the most. And at the same time, I mean, I'm, like I said, I'll meet people with where they're at now. If somebody calls me up and their whole MO is that they don't really believe in themselves and they're looking for some kind of really cheap way out, they think some kind of magic wand and they're not going to have to do anything, and voila, hypnosis, and they stop smoking. Those are not the folks that I'm looking for. It's like they're sort of like pulling the same racket that they have for years on many different topics. They're not fully committed. And I think we know that the people that succeed at anything in life, it's like you got to sort of, and I can help people with this, sort of develop a willpower that's the kind of willpower that, let's say a family member is in a burning house and you want to save them. What kind of willpower would you have when it comes to saving a family member? So I know I'm exaggerating for effect, and I'm using the story because it's fun. But really, I mean, that's what we're talking about. Like, we're talking about, it doesn't matter whether it's smoking or anxiety or PTS or depression. What matters most is the person's got to take responsibility for the change process. They've got to be, I don't mean to sound too cliche, but in it to win it is what's rolling off of my tongue. And they make a commitment to be 100%, to be total, to do whatever it takes to get the result that they're looking for. So,
Well, that's I have a question for you, but I just want to, before I ask the question, I want to invite everybody, if you have questions for Vince, this is a great time to ask them. So please drop them in the comments, because I'm sure he would love to answer these questions live. I would like to get your questions answered live. And so just drop them down in the comments and I will read them for him, and we'll get your questions answered. So the question I have for you, Vince, then is, what about the person who says, I don't really want to quit smoking, I don't really want to quit vaping, or what's your response to those people?
I say, fantastic, that's your choice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's, you can't work with that. I mean, it's like somebody coming in for a chiropractic correction or adjustment, and they don't want to make any other changes. They just want to come in, and they're really not, it's a partnership. It's a team effort. It's a cooperative sport. So I always tell people, if you take care of the why, like the deepest reason why you want to make this change, and really think about that. And you can come up with something where it's like that why, that motivation to run into that house and save a loved one or a pet, for example. I mean, if they can take care of that, I'll take care of the how.
Sure. Well, and I had a wise person say to me one time when I asked that question, if they say they don't want to quit smoking, they're probably lying about other things as well.
Right.
So I didn't want to call you out on that, but I did call you wise.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, and it's a joke, but I think it's speaking to the fact that I've really met very, very few people now. Of course, because of the profession that I'm in, I mean, I'm talking to people if somebody's calling on me on the phone, it's because they're in some kind of pain. Something's not working, or they want to improve something, and they're looking for some assistance. They're looking for somebody to hold space for them to do their own healing, right? So, I mean, nobody calls up and says, I don't want to quit smoking, but, well, actually, sometimes they do.
Okay.
You know what that is?
What? Tell me.
When their spouse,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
spouse is
Doing
getting,
it for someone else rather than
yeah.
themselves.
Now here, again, we have to meet people with where they're at. So the possibility there is to have a dialogue with that person and to ask them some some special questions that will help to provoke the change process. So that's possible too. And if somebody honestly told me, for example, and this is across topics, they said, look, I'm not sure if I'm ready to make a change, but I really want to be in the process of that. I want to get prepared. I want to learn what I need to learn. I want to learn what steps that I can take. If somebody was that honest and just said, look, I'm not 100%, but I'm willing to work with you as long as it takes, then fantastic. That's a great candidate, because as part of my service, I offer a guaranteed premium service where, I'll work with somebody, for example, up until an entire year of working with them. Now, usually in the first or second session, we're going to handle the smoking problem. But then we're looking at doing things like, doubling and tripling somebody's willpower, reprogramming all their smoking triggers. And one of my favorite things is helping lift the veil of illusion, meaning that, we're going to help them access all of the great feelings that they thought they were getting from smoking naturally. One of
Yeah,
the most,
that's yeah, hitting the endorphins and helping them achieve that without having to have that external crutch,
yeah.
right?
I mean, the fact is, even scientifically, the only thing a cigarette does is it's a stimulant. So, I mean, the two main classes of drugs, as you know, stimulants and depressants. I mean, to keep it real simple, nicotine is a stimulant. So, basically, to be completely, fair about this, the only benefit to smoking is that it does raise alertness and awakeness. That is a fact. We can't sugarcoat that. That is a benefit. But the problem is that it creates a chemical imbalance. So now the person's body wanting to get back into balance or homeostasis is going to start, basically releasing depressant type of neurotransmitters or processes to help balance out the too much stimulation, right? So then what happens is there's going to be a period. If a person stops, there's going to be a period of adjustment, and you have to know that going into it. And for people that have like the very best mindset, like they don't even notice it. They just like, after a couple of days, they're drinking lots of water. They're feeling really fantastic, because the hypnotic process is what we do know for sure scientifically is that it helps to influence perception. Now, if you think you can do something and you can do it with confidence and you believe that and you know that and feel that in your body, that's going to be very different than if you're feeling doubtful about something, right? So we want to get people into a really good space and really good place to start any type of change process.
So get them thinking positively first and preparing emotionally, and then your success on the other side is greater.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that somebody can understand exactly what's happening. Like, for example, like if you're a smoker and you want to stop smoking and you really understand what the process is, what it's going to take, sort of like the typical journey, if you will, of that, then you're going to be set up for success to be able to, you're not going to freak out if you're having some feelings, for example. It's going to be like, oh, well, that's Vince told me that's a normal part. I offer a ton of support. Like I often get on the phone with people up almost, it could be daily, or have people text me their concerns or text me how they're doing. We'll do a quick check-in, that sort of thing. So, I want to be there every part in every step of the process for people. In fact, if I don't get a text from some people, especially early in the process, I'm like calling them and checking in, because I typically work by referral. So I'm working with a smaller number of people, especially when it comes to smoking, because I want to be there. Essentially, I want to be there like every day for the first 3 weeks, and we can keep going from there. I mean, it just depends on, what we agree to, what kind of a package we put together for somebody.
I think that's the most critical piece, is to know that they have that level of support. And I wanted to read a testimony. So Sandy Bissett Bow, I think is her name. So she's obviously a client of yours, and she said she smoked for 40 years, went to you, had 3 days of hypnosis, and she says, I've been free for 2.5 years. Thank you and me forever.
Mm,
So that's beautiful, right? I mean, you gave her life back, basically. 40 years of smoking is a long time.
mm.
Do you find, is there any correlation? I mean, obviously after 3 days she was fine, but do you find any correlation with length of time or level of difficulty, or is it really just a matter of getting them into the proper mindset in order to get them to release that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to venture to answer the first question in terms of, I don't know for sure. To answer your question in terms of the physiology, is it actually harder? I sort of think, if I had to guess, based on some knowledge of neuroscience and whatever, maybe, but I'd have to say that in my experience, it's really mindset is going to be the number one key to making any kind of positive changes. So, and I've had so many examples of people where, it may have been 20, 30, 40 years. And what I have found, what I've observed, is what matters the most is their attitude going into it. If they think it's going to be like a really difficult thing, then that's probably what they're going to manifest. And so, um, it's, I got to tell you that most of the people that I've worked with, the only regret that they have is that they hadn't talked to me like 6 months before, or 6 years before, or 16 years before. Just because, I was really thinking about this today in my meditation. I was thinking, from my perspective, it's one of the easiest things to do is to stop smoking. But again, that's only because of my observations and working with people. And my own experience was, I didn't even know I was supposed to have withdrawals, so I never had any. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't get the memo. Like, I think there's a
Right.
lot of brainwashing out there. There's a huge vested interest from tobacco companies, to keep people thinking that it's going to be, a horrible thing. I think we all know somebody, or have heard from somebody that was ill prepared to quit. They used the wrong methods. They had the wrong attitude. And then, it doesn't matter what method they used, well, it didn't work for me. And they're a pretty positive person usually anyway. I'm being sarcastic. Uh, so it's like they weren't in the right headspace to succeed. I always like to joke with people in terms of changes. I'm like, you don't go to college thinking, well, I'm probably going to fail, and I'm not going to really work at this. I'm not going to do the inside work to kind of find that inner jaguar to succeed, and then expect to do well at the end of it. I mean, at least
Yeah.
that wasn't my experience. I mean, when I
No,
went to
not mine either.
college, you know what I'm saying? We
Yeah.
went to college a few times, and it's like, you got to really decide you're going to succeed. And that's part of the manifesting process. And then the other part of it, so that's the intention, that's the conscious mind. The unconscious mind is trusting the process. And then back to the conscious mind is taking the actions and being willing to let somebody teach you, being willing to let somebody coach you, being willing to become the kind of person that becomes a non-smoker, the kind of person that becomes more peaceful, more compassionate, and, you know, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I had a patient years ago, and he was a smoker, and he came in and said he was going to get acupuncture, I think. Yeah, acupuncture to quit smoking. And he kept saying, leading up to his appointment, he kept saying, but I know it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work. I'm going to do it anyway, but I know it's not going to work. And I think like 2 months later, he was like, well, it didn't work. And I just looked at him and I go, why do you think it didn't work? You talked yourself out of it. You literally planted in your brain that it was not going to work. And of course, from the beginning, I was saying, listen, man, you can't continue to have this kind of mindset. If you want to quit and you're going to spend the money on this, you've got to have a more positive outcome in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't happen. And I think he's still smoking today. So it's been
Yeah,
many years.
that's actually, it's actually really, honestly, that's sad to me, that somebody would feel that way about themselves. The good news is we can change that, even somebody like that, with it starts with a willingness. And I always look for the people that call back, because like somebody like that, I would, it would be unprofessional for me to take somebody on like that as a client, with that kind of attitude, unless they were saying, look, this is actually the problem I need to work through first, then fine. And I have many times actually said that to people where, I suggested to them, let's work through those self-esteem issues first and boost up your confidence, so that, when we go to do this, it's going to work, period.
Well, of course, you and I both know with smoking, it's usually not the only thing. It goes along with other poor lifestyle choices. So when you are talking to somebody and interviewing them for the first time, how do you screen or have an interview with them? How do you determine if they're going to be a client of yours? I know you already touched on some of that as mindset, but then how do you determine where to start, as far as, if you go, boy, we got to back up 10 steps and start here. So how do you make that determination on where to start? Because it would seem to me, yeah, if you don't break this down over here, then when you get to the non-smoking part, that's probably not going to be as effective as you want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. I do a really thorough assessment. In fact, it's probably, as far as what I do, it's one of the specialties that I really take a lot of time up front to make sure that somebody is set up for success. So I'm asking questions. I'm watching their body language. I'm listening to their tonality. Somebody can tell you that they're ready, but you can hear the emotion underneath it, and it's like, no, they're not. You can tell, right? And those of us that are watching body language and watching physiology, you can. It's like we develop a sixth sense for observation. And one of the standard simple things for any topic is sort of like, where are you at now? Like, what's the problem? How is it a problem for you? Okay, I need to know that it's a problem for them, that it's, not their neighbor's problem, not their dog's problem, not their wife's problem, that it's truly a problem for them. So
and why now?
Yeah, exactly. So I want to know why it's a problem for them. I want to know why are they willing to make a change now? What's different, for example, from 5 years ago? And then probably and then once that's established, it's like, well, who are you going to be on the other side of this as a non-smoker? And what kind of person is it that you want to be? Because I can tell you the number one motivator for smoking cessation is health, which makes total sense. Smoking creates a lot of fear and anxiety because people are smoking and they're like, oh my God, like, am I going to get heart disease, cancer, and all these different things? So that's very stressful. So it's like, what kind of a person are they going to be? Like, how are they going to be being once they become a non-smoker? So they're going to be more peaceful. They're going to be more focused on their health goals. They're going to be like a better role model for a family member, that sort of thing. So those are the things that I'm looking for. Is I'm looking for the resolution picture, if you will. Like, how is your life going to be so much better when you're a non-smoker? Well, I'm going to be free. Really? You're going to be free. Well, and that's going to be kind of like what? And we start to play around with some metaphors, and, people say the wildest things like, well, I'm going to be free like an eagle. Awesome. Well, what would that eagle like to do when it's free like that, for example?
Right.
We just riff on that and really build in some resiliency and
Who are you going to fly over and poop on? Right.
Right, exactly. Right.
The tobacco company.
Well, there's a place for proper anger here. A lot of people that smoke tend to have some issues around anger. It's like, well, let's redirect that anger to the right place. Let's properly rebel.
Yeah.
Who are you gonna, if you want to be rebellious, that's great. We can use that. Who are you gonna properly rebel towards?
Oh my gosh. Hold on.
Oh yeah.
Hannah! Charlie's at the front. Oh my God, my dog ran off and the neighbor's bringing him back. Jeez. Okay, you keep talking. Let me grab the dog.
Okay. Well, hey, folks, I want to thank you so much for being here. Sandy, so much. Thank you so much for your comment. And
Thank you.
I've only been on Facebook Live twice now, and I can tell you that this is the first. Very glad that things are being handled. The dog's safe at home. And like Dr. Paula said, if you have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer them. This is your opportunity. And thank you so much for sharing this far and wide. This is our opportunity to possibly save some lives. Somebody that stops smoking today versus 30 years from now, it makes a huge, huge difference. Really give people a chance to take control of their health, their their precious time, their money, and their confidence to do the things that they really want to do.
Talking about when you were talking about the anger, do you find that post that? So, actually, I'm gonna rephrase that question. So prior to that, because I think in one of our conversations before, you were saying that it's not actually about the cigarettes or the vaping or whatever the addiction is. It's not actually about that. It's about something else in their past that's causing them to hold on to that. So the evolution of that, so then they have an addiction, and then post that, once they quit, some multifaceted question, do you find then later down the road that there's like anger or regret and, maybe some angst over that?
I mean, yeah, sometimes, but I think that's more a function of things that were going on before they stopped smoking. Habits are really like based on associations. So, like, for example, if I think that every time I feel stressed, I should have a cigarette, then that association, if the unconscious mind perceives a benefit, it'll help create a habit like that. Even though it's got our back 100%, it's sort of like trying to help us get what we want. And the good news is we can, there's ways of really working with that for, to really increase the behaviors that we want to engage in. So it's an interesting phenomenon, though, because if you think about it, most people start smoking around the age of 13 on average. And it's usually a number of things. It's like they want to feel confident. They want to have a sense of belonging in their peer group. It's sort of a ritual. It sort of marks like a passage, a rite of passage almost. So then what happens is the unconscious mind of that young person, it's the strangest thing, because the first time somebody has a cigarette, I can remember the first time I did, it was disgusting. it was not something pleasant at all. And it's the weirdest thing, because the person then has to sort of force themselves to like it. The same is true for alcohol, and other types of things that we do. So toward that end, the reason that they started is not the same reason that they're continuing to do it. So that's something that needs to be handled, but also in any of the feelings that maybe weren't being addressed as a smoker, because if a person has a cigarette every time they're feeling stressed, it's a missed opportunity. They're not really growing as a person, because they're not giving themselves a chance to really grow up emotionally. The way we grow up emotionally is by feeling our feelings, not being afraid of them, embrace those feelings, and letting ourselves grow as a person. Every time you do that, you become more resilient. Every time you do that, you become more capable of more stress, so to speak. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find that after, let's just say after a year of working with someone, do people come back to you and say, wow, I had no idea that I was going to accomplish this or achieve that, or that emotionally I was going to get to that level? Like, once you teach them these principles, that they start excelling on their own and achieving things that they never even thought possible?
I mean, that's absolutely the vision. That's my favorite stories, to hear back from people. One of my favorite stories was a gentleman emailed me a couple years back, and he said something to the effect of, he said, um, pardon me, and I think that was 2 or 3 sessions as well back then. I've gotten a little more efficient with how I do it, but he said something like, I accomplished more in the last year as a non-smoker than I have in the prior 5 years to that. So that is a pretty good example of what I would call generative change. So the fella came in to stop smoking, and then after, and I only worked with him 3 times, but something in that process created. Hang on one second.
Yeah, I know.
My
It's all this home derailing.
Yeah, my phone is ringing.
Okay.
Okay, there you are.
It's not as bad as the dog running off.
Hey, that's pretty crazy, but I'm glad the dog's safe at home.
I thought he was sitting right here, and apparently he wasn't, because the neighbor just walked by the front door with him, and I was like, okay. Anyway,
right.
we digress. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So what was I saying? So yeah, so the fellow, worked with him about 3 times. He stopped smoking, and then it spurred a whole cascade of positive changes in terms of productivity. Like, 5 years of productivity in 1 year is I mean, that's a lot. I mean,
I would like that.
Yeah, I'd like half of that would be amazing.
I know, right? Well, let me ask you this. If you're not somebody who smokes or vapes, so let's just say me or someone else, are you able to create that change just through hypnosis anyway with people for just wanting to accomplish more in their lives?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew the answer to that, but
yeah, I mean, seriously, like I've been doing this for about 23 years now, being as a psychotherapist and formally doing hypnosis within sessions. I just sort of blend different techniques together at this point, really customizing the work with my clients. But I was saying to somebody last week, it doesn't matter what the topic is generally. I mean, there are some things that I would be happy to refer out, but the general topics, and even some strange topics like phobias and different things like that. So it doesn't matter as much anymore what the topic is, because the principles that I use can work with any type of topic. Again, speaking.
When you started this, and I don't know if you still do this now, but did you learn, or can you self-hypnose?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So do you teach people that as part of the process, or is that something different?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. where clients are open to meditation, mindfulness, and hypnosis. That's something that it's actually one of my favorite things to do, because I think you were sort of alluding to it earlier. We're looking to create real empowerment here. This isn't about like, I mean, it's never been my MO to want to create clients like forever. Like I think back, I think it's still happening where, some people have been in analysis for 20 years laying on somebody's couch 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, to me, that just, I don't know, it scares the shit out of me that that still happens.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's just totally not my thing. I'm more interested in, really helping people to heal themselves, empower themselves, make the changes that they want to make. And yeah, I've had clients for several years, and that's fine. But they've also made a lot of really great changes in their life. I'm somehow allergic to clients that maybe lean on the dependent side. They want to be told everything, and they don't want to actually take steps. That's not a good fit for me. I'm much better with highly motivated clients who they're open to discovering what they want, how they can get it, and how they can really own their potency, their power, and their value as a human being. I mean, that's what fires me up.
That's awesome. I mean, that was like, I want to like jump up and cheer at that. And if people are watching this and aren't inspired by what you just said and inspired to want to use your services to help them achieve something greater, I don't know. I don't know how. There must have had the volume turned down or something, because that was really incredible. When I want to just go back to the self-hypnosis for a second. So does that, I'm assuming that comes after the fact. So you do what you have decided needs to get done. You come up with a plan of action. And then is teaching them to self-hypnose that comes after the fact, so that now they have a tool when you send them off into the world to fly around and shit on the tobacco company, right?
I think it's something that gets integrated pretty organically. I mean, in a way, if you think of hypnosis and psychotherapy as a creative process, and I always think of it as people are already in therapy, whether they have a therapist or not. And what I mean by that is we're self-reflective beings. Some people are better at it than others. I think of it as a muscle. So when I'm holding space for people, there's a learning and there's a transmission that happens between therapist and client, and then from client to therapist. I mean, I always joke with people like, hey, this is going to be a great session. And the reason for that is because I want it to be the greatest session possible, because I benefit as well. It's a mutually beneficial process. So I never want to do a crappy session, because I want to be elevated as well in the process. So as part of that process, if we can talk about meditation and mindfulness and training the attention properly, people are going to get a lot further faster with a properly trained attention. One of my favorite quotes is when you combine, I'm just paraphrasing real quick here, you combine your intention with your attention, and you believe in yourself, and you take the actions that'll support those types of outcomes, then magic literally happens. And so
I want to write that down. I mean, Vince, your passion, I think from the time I met you, your passion for what you do, your passion for helping people, it's really amazing. It comes forth from you. And I think that was just something that really attracted me to connecting with you. So I really appreciate you coming on and doing this interview. I'm going to say that we are going to do this again, because I pulled a Terry Bean and I forgot to start recording for the first 3 minutes. And then of course the dog and your phone. So we'll do it again, and we'll record from the beginning, but I think this is really important information. So for now, can you tell people where they can find you and what they need to do if they want to reach out to you and find out if the two of you are a good fit together.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And again, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this and I look forward to a dozen more. Um, in any event,
Deal.
and in any event, the best place to reach me is at my website, newoutcomestherapy.com. So the word new, outcomestherapy.com.
I'm putting that in the
And
comments right now.
okay, cool. And my phone number's there. There's a place where you can put your contact information, any questions that you have for me. If you're maybe currently looking to do some healing work and make some positive changes, then you can let me know how I can help you. What is it that you're looking for, that sort of thing, and I'll get back to you as quick as I can, and that'll be awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, it doesn't hurt to connect with Vince. I mean, you probably have questions for him. So he's a pretty reachable and approachable human being, and you'll love his energy. And so just reach out to him. I know he loves to help people. So whatever questions you have, send it to him. Don't be afraid to contact him, and he will be here for you. So and we want to see the gongs next time. He told me he has gongs, and I was like, I don't know anybody that has gongs. That's so cool. So I think when we do this again, we are going to need to have a little bit of a gong session. In fact, that could be part of what we do next time. Don't you think? That'd be kind of fun.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Kind of
All right.
meditate.
Is there anything else you wanted to share with anybody, Vince, while you have a captive audience?
I said more than I thought I might say, so I think it's a good place to leave it right now. And since we're going to be doing this again, we'll have other opportunities. So thank you so
It
much.
sounds perfect. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate your time. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Reach out to Vince. He's a great guy. I know you will love working with him. So I appreciate all you being here, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm stopping live stream, stopping recording.